Okay, and we're back again. High Desert Home and Garden with the 9573. It is now Saturday, the morning after. I did the valve cover gasket and repaired the wiring harnesses for the valve cover gasket on the right bank of the engine. Well, let's see how she starts up. Let's see, I think my phone says 34 right now. So when I got up this morning it was 24. Turn that off. Wait, start, go off. As you can see, she's dead cold. Gonna have to say that was still a little bit harder than I like for it to be, but it's a lot better than what it was. It didn't lope and roll quite as hard as it didn't lope and roll at all, but it was a little bit slower to fire than I would like it to be at this temperature. So I guess I'll have to go about investigating the left bank of the engine today and see what I've got going there. If I've got a bad glow plug or what I've got going. Might be that I have a weak relay. Anyway, I'll try and get some of that on video for you also, so we can see, go through a little bit of the troubleshooting process on what to do with these things when they don't want to start. Anyway, we'll talk to you here in a bit. If I can get the damn thing to quit recording. Okay, we're back. So as I said, we're going to do a little digging on this 7.3 and see why it's not quite starting to my liking. So first things first, in order to get to the connector for the injector harness or the valve cover harness on the left bank of the engine, we have to take all of our intake tubing off of here. So I'm going to get started on that real quick, and then we'll get our connectors undone and we'll start testing this process. Okay, so we're back. I've got everything disconnected here. Got my intake tube off and got my voltmeter set up. Now, on just a visual inspection, I can see here that I have a problem. I don't know how well you guys can see it, but once again, I have a burn off pin on my connector here, like I had on the other side. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to turn on the key and make sure that we're getting power from the glow plug relay, which is this guy right here, to these connectors, and then we will ohm out our glow plug, our valve cover harness, so we can see if we have any bad glow plugs or not. So key on. That click and that strange buzzing sound is my glow plug relay. So check here, we've got 11.26 volts, 11.3 volts on that one. Over here, same as always. And this one, I have no power on, however, which I'm not surprised about. Actually, I do have power, but that piece of harness there, that piece of the connector is not very good. So we're going to have to do some more replacement. And hopefully this will be a little bit better video since I have you guys on the tripod this time. Anyway, let's go ahead and ohm this out and see if we have any bad glow plugs or not. This move around out of the way. That one's good. That one's good. This one here probably doesn't even have a pin left on it, but that one is good. So I'm going to take a guess and say that all of my glow plugs are good. I just have another bad harness. Oh, this stuff, well, I can't really say it's getting old because, you know, this old truck's been very, very dependable for the time that I've owned it. So now we'll just get the valve cover off the left bank, which is a lot easier to get to than the right bank, and same tools required as yesterday, basically. Only difference is we've got to take this intake tube bracket off, and all the rest of it is pretty cut and dried and simple stuff to do. So once I get the cover off, I'll show you what I find. Okay, we're back again, and I have the exact same issue with this valve cover harness as I do with the other one. I don't know how well you can see that off the camera. Let me try and back it up a little bit if it will. Okay. But anyway, the harness connector, the engine harness connector that plugs into there, this pin here for your back glow plug, is burnt off of that harness connector. So we're going to have to replace that. And since I'm in here, we're going to go ahead and replace the valve cover gasket because I have a new one. While we're at it. Now, here are your electrical shock warnings. They put them on the left-hand valve cover. And, yeah. This thing runs on 90 volts DC to fire your injectors. That'll put your dick in the dirt, for sure. So my advice is don't play around in here with the engine running. So we're going to go ahead, since we've got the harness off, and just ohm test our glow plugs once I get my light hung up so I can see what I'm doing. There, my meter's already going to ground, so I know it's working. The only one that I have a real question about is going to be this guy right back here. It is good. Next one's good. Next one's good. And that one is good also. Okay. So, we know that all 8 glow plugs are good. And my only issue thus far has been really these connectors. Now the one over here, wherever it might be, right there, was so far gone that it had actually burned the pin off of the old valve cover harness. This one, the pin in the valve cover harness is still good, but we're gonna change it anyway just because we have one. And I'll be soldering on a new one of these. Well, while I don't see anything wrong with that one particularly, we're gonna unwrap all this and see if there's any wiring issues with this one. And just another little helpful hint, this red tape on the harness, that was Ford's way of letting you know from the factory that there was something different in there. 90 volts DC power. This was pretty much the first engine available with anything of the sort. Caterpillar, of course, had Huey engines, which works the same way this one does, with the high pressure oil to fire the injectors and 90 volt. 90 volt power to the solenoids on the injectors, this piece right here, and high pressure engine oil to actually, so yeah, here, let's just explain this a little bit. Your solenoid pulls up a plunger, opens a port in there, allows your high pressure oil to force down another plunger, which actually injects your fuel through the tip of the injector. It's a little bit of an overly complex system, but for its day it was way ahead of its time. And when this thing was built, it was the king of power at 215 horsepower and 425 foot-pounds of torque. Kind of a far cry from today's diesels, but yeah, as I've said before, I'm probably about $6,000 into this truck, counting purchase price and parts that I've put into it in 4 years. And another video that I've done about it, I make little over 16 miles per gallon at 75 miles an hour. And the new $80,000 trucks get 16 miles per gallon at 75 miles an hour. Now, also not to mention that I can do everything they can do, just not quite as fast. And I'm okay with being slow. Anyway, we'll get this set up, put back together, wipe down, get the new valve cover harness on it, get the valve cover itself back on and bolted down, and start stripping the harness out. Good times. We'll catch you guys back here in a little bit. Okay, so we are back. I have my new valve cover gasket harness installed, and the valve cover's back on. Also, I got the one section wiring harness I know to be bad stripped back, all the loom off. Our hang this light up, shield wire here, and our aluminum foil shield off of the 3 center wires on the connector. And now we're going to start replacing that connector. Same solder on terminals as I used yesterday, and I'm going to do the same process, but hopefully I'm going to have you set up where you can kind of watch me do it. I've figured it out now, I think.